my pleasure to welcome you to Passion Pivots, where we explore the key decision-making moments our guests have as they explore their lifestyle, entrepreneurial, and adventure dreams. My name is Scott Armstrong, and I have the exciting job to be your host, conductor, and provocateur for today's journey. Before we get started, I would like to thank our sponsor, Adventure 50, who've been helping those 40-plus find their incredible life adventures since 2012. I'm thrilled today. Today I've got Rob Froher, who is a friend of mine who I met 3 or 4 years ago on the East Coast when he was transitioning out of the Canadian military. Now, Rob caught my eye right away. One is because, fitness is obviously something that's very important to him, but he's also an incredibly generous human being. And he was in that process of transitioning out of the military and starting his own business, which he is running today, a business called Muscle Lines. Rob, I'd like to welcome you to Passion Pivots.
Thanks so much, Scott. I really do appreciate this opportunity to come and sit and talk with you and share my story and give you some updates on where I've been and what I've been up to.
I'm looking forward to that. So, Rob, my view of your life pretty much happened at the end of your military career. Can take us as far back as you want. Give us some sense of those defining moments in your life that helped shape the person who you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Wow, defining moments for me. One of them was actually, really kind of joining the military in the first place. I came from a background, I only had 2 jobs before I joined the military.
Mm-hmm.
And, one was McDonald's and one was Walmart. So now 26 years later, coming out of the military, I find myself going, wow, I never actually had to search for a job or make myself a resume or even get myself a health card. So it's kind of crazy.
That's a lot of adjustment. Rob, can you take us a little bit? I mean, you shared with me a couple of your missions that you were, in with the military. What branch of the military did you belong with, and where were some of the places that you got to see through your experience there?
Military took me all over the world, and that was one of the things that I joined for, was a little bit of adventure and seeing the world. Coming from Regina, Saskatchewan, as a farm kid, hadn't even really seen the ocean. So joining the Navy, all of a sudden, it was just like, wow, this is a cool place. The stuff that I really remember the most was going to Israel. And I remember thinking what a beautiful country that was.
Mm-hmm.
Singapore was so great. Just being around the world 2 or 3 times, having the opportunity to go through the Suez and Panama Canal at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And then just all the sailing and things you see on the open ocean. And it was a great experience being in the military.
So in terms of the military, your specific role, were you combat, were you communications? Where did you, hang your hat?
I was part of the combat department, but my specific job was called naval communications. Mm-hmm. So that's specifically long-range communication through satellites, UHF, HF. I was the IT guy. Everybody loved me and hated me at the same time. And as you can imagine, and, just running servers and making all the IT gadgets work.
Wow. And where did you get that training? The military provided for you?
Yeah, they actually did. I didn't know one single thing about IT equipment, and they sent me back to school. I got my certifications through that, and off I went.
Wow. And now when you're leaving the military, Rob, you're coming from a heavily prescripted environment. And a lot of our tribe are people who've worked for a company, for a long period of time. We call them lifers. And, but in the military, it's even a step or 2 up that way because, you're taken care of and, everything has a schedule attached to it. How do you go from that regimentation to wanting to own your own business?
Good question. I kind of go back to this movie that I watched one time called Shawshank Redemption. And, Morgan Freeman was sitting there explaining how he had become institutionalized. And that was some term that I heard, and I immediately identified with, because that's how it occurred to me after a little bit of being in the military. Not in a bad way from my perspective, but it was very, like you described, regimented, and there was a lot of certainty there, and there was a lot of security. And I think in a lot of ways that's why I liked it. And then at the end of my career, realizing that there was a backlash to that. There was a identity piece that had built up over time that now I actually had to shed or let die in order for me to be reborn as something else. So I did actually have to, have an identity death in order to have a rebirth as a personal trainer or a lifestyle coach. And it took a bit to have that happen.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Rob. There's thousands of people who leave the military or paramilitary organizations every year, and they don't look for that rebirth. They hang on to that identity and try to bring it back to civilian life. What was different about you that you had that insight that you had to let part of that die so that you could be reborn?
Well, that I didn't come by that very easily. As a matter of fact, the end part of my career, I was struggling with, pretty heavy anxiety and depression. Become very successful in my job and well respected and all that. But the depression and the anxiety didn't have me see that. So I came face to face with the fact that what I was doing, thinking, and saying wasn't working anymore. And I had to change that. And quite forcefully, it was brought upon me that, hey, this is not going to change itself. So I did. And, at first with great reluctance. And then, my wife came along and she said, look, Rob, what you're doing here is not working. I suggest you go back to your roots and get back into training. And at that time I said, there's no way. I don't even feel like getting off the couch. Yeah. And that's the best thing that I ever did, quite frankly, was to go back down to the gym. And even though I didn't want to do it, I did something.
Yes.
And that something led to, feeling a little bit better and a little bit better. And finally, I got back. And then I started becoming interested in like what else I could do.
And so you went from, going back to the gym and training to not now just becoming a personal trainer for a large gym, but to owning your own studio. Can you share a little bit about that journey? Because a lot of people that we talk to and listen to these podcasts are folks who are or have been in that place of total inertia. They just don't know what the first steps are. So you're now back at the gym. You've taken your first step. How did you go from there to thinking about, well, gee, I could run my own studio?
Yeah, it was, I guess it was a little bit of a logical step. I've always been a physical person. I engage with that more than academia. But it was just like, I knew that what I was doing was making me feel better. And now thinking back on why that was, I'm able to express that. And I go to, anything that is having you take an action in the present moment, like fitness is. You can't do fitness in the future, and you can't do it in the past. It has to be right now, and it has to be immediate. And same thing with mindful eating or meditation or anything that I generally makes people feel good, it's immediate, and the benefits of it are immediate. And there's tons of science that will back that up. But you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that what makes you feel better makes you feel better, and you don't need to know why or explain it. It just is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so now you're feeling better and you're thinking about running your own studio. Now, you and I met through the Prince's Operation Entrepreneur, which is a Canada-wide charity which helps transitioning military personnel start their own businesses. Tell me a little bit about how you found that resource, because a lot of people who are looking to transition need to find that resource, that group of people who are going to support them. How did you find POE, and what did that do to shape your vision of your future?
Yeah, thanks for that. So I found POE, which is Prince's Operation Entrepreneur, put on by Prince Charles as a charity. I found that through one of my old chiefs. He found out that I was interested in getting out of the military and starting my own business. Excuse me. And he asked whether or not I knew about this program. And I had at that time, but I didn't actually take it seriously. And he said, well, you are a great candidate, and I think that you'd be really good at it. So he encouraged me to apply. And just out of a lark, I said, okay, what the heck? What do I have to lose? And I put in the application form that day. And like a couple of weeks later, they came back and they said I was approved. At that time, I had no idea that it was free, that they would fly me wherever the program was, and feed us and a whole bunch of other things. So the program was fantastic. That's where I ran into you, Scott, and it was like invaluable business knowledge that I got for free that I couldn't have got anywhere else.
So tell me about, that sense of, you may have your business. Where's your business today, Rob? Tell me about, in generalities if you want, but the number of clients you see, is it a full-time gig, a part-time gig? What's Muscle Lines doing today?
Muscle Lines is actually doing really well. We have expanded into I guess a boutique, really specialized shop where we coach people, provide them nutritional advice, and give them the personal training touch, mostly one-on-one. I have done some groups. What I like to focus on is specifically movement for people. So what that means is, there's different levels of movement. There's, level 1, which is beginner or not knowing anything. Level 2, which is your movement is okay, but you're not master. And level 3 is you're a master of movement. So I take people in the, we'll call it the beginning stage, and keep putting them in that beginning stage, because that's where people learn the most.
Okay.
It makes them more present in this moment with their bodies.
So when we're thinking of people, who are part of our tribe, the Passion Pivots, somewhere that 45 plus range, what are some of the big things that we should be looking out for as we get older, and perhaps, nature is taking its course, and unless we pay attention to it, we're going to see some deficits. Where those deficits show up for us?
At Muscle Lines, I love addressing this. I've got a 80-year-old client who came in and said, Rob, I'm really struggling, and it's funny. It was a 80-year-old woman, and she said, I want to be able to move my furniture.
Sorry,
I'm not kidding.
I love that.
That was her primary goal. And I just said, okay, absolutely. And what else? And she had this laundry list of things that she wanted. And one of the big things with people over 40, and this is like really pertinent, what I'm seeing now, is that we're losing the ability to regulate our immune systems, our hormonal systems, blood pressure, and our blood sugar levels. And also, our ability to keep muscle mass on our bodies is being lost as well. So I said, well, okay, let's try and address all those things for you. And we did. In probably about 2.5 months, 3 months, she was moving her own furniture. She had gone back to the doctor, regulated most all of her systems. And, she was just feeling healthier than she had since she said 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how important, I mean, that's an incredible story. How important is it for folks who are, in that 45, 55, 60 range to get exercise now? What benefits do they get later in life, when they're 70 and 80? Do the benefits spill over to the later years, or they're isolated for today?
Yeah, so huge benefits for people. I think the older that we're getting, the more muscle mass we're losing. And if you picture a car, the engine of the cars is the most important. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere. Well, the engine for us is our muscle structure, and it's also the thing that regulates our anti-aging capabilities or properties, is what they're finding. So we actually age slower with more muscle mass than with less.
Interesting.
So yeah, that was interesting to me to find that out. And the anti-aging property of having more muscle mass is that you can do more things, that your bone density is higher, that your connective tissues are more prepared to handle workloads and stuff like that. And your endocrine system actually checks in and finds out whether or not you're moving, and gives you, better protein synthesis if you are moving, more hormones, this, that, and the other thing. Whereas if you're not moving, it gives you less and less.
So, I'm going to, speak, I don't know how old you are, Rob, but I'm going to guess you're, 40-ish. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, I'm 46.
Okay, so yeah, gosh, man, you're looking 46. Take a look at the picture on Rob on this artwork here, and yeah, he's doing something right. I'd believe him. But at 56, I go to the gym, and I'll do the reps, and I'll be pumped up. By the time I get home, I'm like a weathered balloon again. It's sort of like it's a very temporary effect. Is where when I was younger, I'd work out my biceps. What they were. They'd hang around for a day or two, but so it's a little discouraging at this age to work out knowing that the effects seem to be very temporary. Are you telling me and our audience here that you should keep working out anyways, even if you're not catching that pumped up effect, that you are still building muscle mass that's going to help you?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I do know about muscles is that they don't age. The rest of our body does, but you can build muscle mass right up until the time that we expire.
Okay. Wow. That's a neat one. I was actually shoveling snow in Saskatoon, just a little bit north of your, birthplace there. And the gentleman beside me was 97, and he still works out on his elliptical, for 15 minutes a day at 97. And I was having a tough time keeping up with him. So, I gotta believe what you're saying here. In terms of nutrition, because that's also a big part of what we do. Our lives are not getting any slower. There's more processed foods and all those things. Without me leading you in a specific direction, if you could give a top 2 or 3 tips for people in terms of their dietary considerations, again, for that 40, 45 plus market, what would they be?
Yeah, absolutely. With nutrition, the best thing to do is live by a simple rule. If you can't run after it, chase it, pick it, or dig it, don't put it in your mouth. And that, that pretty much goes along the lines of picking whole foods, identifying things, before they get processed. These kinds of ways of cooking and living are ancient, and they acknowledge that they're coming with vitamins, minerals, nutrients, all of these things that the body needs, and all of the other processed foods, all of that stuff is being taken away. And the sugar that's being put into our diets through known or unknown sources is actually harming us a great deal.
Wow. I heard that on, we'll say, Spines Ketchup, because I don't want to say the real name on the podcast, that they actually broke up their ingredients on their list because really the number one ingredient is sugar, but they broke it up into tomato paste, etc., so that sugar wouldn't be the number one ingredient on their ketchup. So I hear what you're saying with that. Tell me a little bit about what's your perspective on, consuming animal proteins. There's a huge, growing body of evidence that, even the meat industry has been saying, let's have meat-free Mondays now because we don't need to have it every day. How much should, meat should we be consuming, assuming that we don't have, ethical concerns around that? What is a healthy amount, and do you distinguish between red meat and chicken? I think I just asked you about 4 questions, so my apologies on that.
Okay, I'm going to try and answer that one. How much meat should we eat? So I like the China study, and if anybody's familiar with it, and it was done over a 25-year period, but it found that the eating of meat and the preponderance of cancer was correlated.
Mm-hmm.
So they said in that study that one could expect that if they ate 5% of their diet in meat, that it would go down, and more than 15% would go up. And just looking at a whole foods diet, is there something wrong with eating meat? I don't think so. Eating too much of it, I think, is a problem because it's going to cause issues with your digestion. It sits in there. It actually rots at some point. So that doesn't matter if you're eating, red meat or chicken. There's still going to be a certain amount of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think it matters how long you go between meals. So when you're eating in the day and what you're eating matters.
Okay. And so what would be an ideal sort of meal gap time in your idea?
I would say 2 to 4 hours between meals
Mm-hmm.
at minimum. 4 hours would be great.
Okay.
So that means that you're probably eating less. You don't want to eat too late at night. So probably if your eating window was between, let's say, 8 o'clock and 8 o'clock, that's 12 hours of eating, and then one would expect to stop and be able to digest their food fully.
Makes sense. Makes sense. When you think about exercise, just to close out the free tips I'm trying to get from you, Rob, for our audience here, if they're not at the gym and getting moving and stuff, because they haven't prioritized it. And I never buy that you don't have time for exercise, because I always equate it to, well, then you like burning money, because when you don't get exercise, you don't think optimally, you don't act optimally, which means that in your business world and all your interactions, you're making subpar decisions. So exercise to me means, making better decisions. If I can't get to the gym, or go out for a bike ride, are there anything that I can do around the house that would help strengthen, I've heard about sitting muscles and those kinds of things. Are there some exercises that you could just 1 or 2 quickly describe verbally to the audience that they could take part in at home?
Are you're asking about exercise?
Yeah. At home, I don't have time to go to the gym for an hour tonight. I've got 15-minute window to do something. Is there something I can do at home that would give me some significant benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do anything with body weight exercises nowadays. I like a app called ThenX.
Hmm.
Um, and he's got some great body weight exercises in there. But more specifically, Muscle Alliance does the movement aspect of it, and it's all done with just body weight. So push-ups are really simple.
Hmm.
Any kind of crawling on the ground is going to activate your entire core and your entire body. So, even though it sounds crazy, I
Hmm.
recommend crawling around like a baby.
Okay. So what, my kids can laugh at me, but I should probably just ignore that and continue crawling anyway.
Absolutely. There's lots of other things like getting exercise bands at home or a ball or something like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be complicated, and you can do it in 15 minutes and get a really good workout out of that. And as long as you do the exercises one after another, it's going to be cardio and it's going to be weights, so you satisfy both requirements.
That's incredible. So we've got some nutritional advice out of it. We've got some exercise advice. We've heard a little bit about your passion pivot from military to muscle line, but your passion pivot hasn't stopped there because you talked before about having some challenges getting off the couch, and you've been searching for some non-traditional remedies to continue in your recovery with PTSD and some of its effects there. And just before we got on air here, you shared with me your latest one. Can you let the audience know what you're working on right now?
Sure. Right now, I'm developing a not-for-profit for helping people with PTSD, and it's really new and it's in infancy. And one of the things that I thought would be cool would be blacksmithing. And I related to it as being man art. And I don't really want to put a man or woman on that because women do it too.
Hmm.
And I engaged with it because I saw it on TV called, Forged in Fire was the TV show. And I just found a place where they give blacksmithing advice, and there's a forge there and then a bunch of tools. And I just started doing it, and happened to be lucky enough to get some instruction and make a steel rose. That was my first project.
And this is where, folks, I wish this was a live video cast because Rob shared with me. And Rob, maybe if you have a picture of your rose, you can email it, and I'll put it in because it is gorgeous. It is just stunning and intricate. It is a black, 1/8 inch metal plate rose with all the beautiful crimps and the petals and things like that. So, quite an artist. So, what do you hope to do with the blacksmithing to help those with PTSD?
Yeah, good question. I've really been thinking and lamenting, what do I do with people with PTSD? And it just kind of came to me that they're the experts in PTSD, and I don't have to be an expert.
Hmm.
Uh, what I did want to cause was the healing to take place for people, and to stop people from taking the drugs and alcohol route, the suicide route, the ripping up their lives and their families, and doing something that is a present activity, meaning that it has to be done right now, like blacksmithing. You're hitting stuff with a hammer, and uh, heating it up with fire, and bending it.
Hmm.
It's present activity. There is nothing more present than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're moving your body and you're lifting heavy things or mindfully eating, there is nothing more present than that. And I think that's why it's effective, and that's why it works. And it opens the door to, or it's a key to opening the door to the greater part of life, or the unseen part of life that gives you fulfillment, love, appreciation, peace, all of those things.
I know the audience now, they already received this, but knows why I wanted to have you on this program, because that's absolutely an incredible initiative. Passion Pivots isn't always about for ourselves as we get older. It's about contributing to others. And Rob, your project there sounds simply amazing. If our audience members want to get a hold of you, Rob, how do they find you?
Anybody that wants to get a hold of me, I'd love to come and talk to you either on the phone or in person. Our website is musclelines.com. You can email me at robfroher@gmail.com. That's Rob, Froher. And yeah, just come check us out at Muscle Lines.
Yeah, and for the ladies, women who are listening to your wife is involved in this, and she's had a minor role in bodybuilding, hasn't she? And I say that tongue in cheek. Give us the 10-second bio of what your wife has done in terms of bodybuilding.
Wow, wish I had her right here.
Yeah,
She is a former Canadian champion bodybuilder back in the 80s. After that, she quit bodybuilding and, for many years. In 2003, she's restarted her career as a fitness model and figure model, won 3 third-place world championships, went to numerous other competitions, got, a bunch of first and second, third places there, and finished out her career in 2011.
wow. And
Yeah.
here she's quite the artist as well, just like her hubby. So I call these two guys the dynamic duo. They are truly incredible. Rob,
Mm.
I just want to say thank you so much for making time in your busy day for joining us here at Passion Pivots.
Thanks so much, Scott. This has been a treat, and it's been great catching up with you and, to the listeners out there. One thing that I would want to say is that I realized recently that I stand in the presence of greatness and help people understand why they are great. And I really want people to understand why they are great.
Very cool. That's a great gift for anyone, Rob. Thank you so much. Have yourself a great evening, my friend, and you and I will cross paths again soon. For now, this is Passion Pivots and Scott Armstrong. Have a great day, guys. Cheers.